I want to welcome everybody to this demonstration. JonBenet Ramsey, mom, did it all because she wet the bed, allegedly. Now, this is one of the main reasons why those that feel like Patsy done it, this is the reason why they're saying that she wet the bed, and there was evidence that was, I believe, involved in the case with multiple underwears of JonBenet, and they were wet. Then you had um, the bowel movement, allegedly, that was put on the bed or somewhere around the bed, placed by the brother Burke. But what we're going to do is, in this demonstration, that's what we're going to go over. We're going to go down a rabbit hole, and we're going to really see, is there enough evidence? Because it's one thing he say, she say, or I believe, but is there enough evidence? Is there enough evidence that would lead for what word am I looking for? A conviction. I'm gonna just say a conviction on the mom, just based off of she wet the bed. Now, my opinion, that's the case. I don't think that the mom set out, and whoever, here's my thing. Let me just backtrack. If Burke is responsible for it, if Patsy is responsible for it, even if John is responsible for it, I don't think that they set out to unalive JonBenet. I just think that it was an accident, and accidents do happen. So that's what I think. But let's go down the rabbit hole and let's chop it up. Salute to the chat. Salute to my moderator. Salute to the replay gang. I see you, Leslie. Kern. I'm going to just call you 7710 because I'm going to mess your name up. I see you, 7710. All right, y'all. Let's do what we do over here. Nikki Lynn, I see you. Alicia, Evelyn, Clown TV Nation. So, for those that just pulled up, what we're going to be discussing, is it enough evidence that can prove that the mom, Patsy, unalived JonBenet because she wet the bed? Drop a one. Drop a one in the chat if you feel like that's what happened. It was over her wetting the bed. Drop a two if you say nah. All right, I got you, L. I got you, L. I see you, Toonie. Always wanted to know about what happened to that baby. I see you, 8457. I see you. All right. Criminal Network, Nikki Lynn, they dropped two. They like, nah. Marty, I see you, Marty. Well, see, here's the thing for me, right? 8457. So most of y'all dropped the two. Appreciate this super sticker, Peaches. Here's where I'm at with it. All right. I'll let everybody know where I'm at with it. I'm still believing that Burke, the brother, allegedly unalived JonBenet. I think that the mom, of course, tried to cover it up. Got the dad involved in the cover up. Look, we have to cover this up. So I'm still standing on Burke allegedly unaliving her. All right. I see you, Shelly. I hope you're feeling well, Shelly. The UM1 enter into CODIS does not match any of the Ramseys. So if they did it, whose DNA was recovered? And that's a good question. And I'm going to get into that because many people have passed the lie detector test and they lie, right? Now, as far as the DNA, remember, they're going to retest the DNA. So what is making them retest the DNA, right? According to the autopsy report, the family's DNA was cleared. But it does make you wonder because they were so calm during the interview. And that's true. And I mean, I'm not saying that it's possible, but they could have got the DNA, they could have got the semen from somebody. We got to remember now, in my opinion, they put this together to deceive law enforcement. They put this together. They covered this up and they tried to cover all their tracks. So it was nothing for them to get some semen. Where are they going to get the semen from, Shane? Easily. Patsy could have had sexual relations with a man and got the semen, right? Burke was 9 years old. He did not red rum his sister. I'm caught in between. I'm caught in between, Criminal Network. Now, I do know that you know the case. You got a thorough knowledge of the case, but I'm caught in between. I'm thinking that Burke did it, Criminal Network. I see you, Squeak. Thank you, still down. Okay. Can I get everybody to throw up some prayer hands for Shelly? Nikki agrees with Criminal Network. It was saliva mixed with JonBenet's blood. This was another case that was confusing, very confusing. If you feel he did it while the strangling, I think what happened was, I think that the strangling part comes in when Patsy and John, I believe that John is behind the strangulation because I believe that she was still alive, but I think that she was badly hurt. And so, you know, she was, if not going to be in a vegetable state, I don't think that she would have made it alive that much longer. So I think the bat and I think the strangulation, I think all that was a part of the cover-up. Make sure y'all hit the like button for me. I see you send dollars. I see you. The strangling was the cover-up. That's where I'm at with the strangulation. You know. And once they cover the strangulation part, I'll come back with y'all and cover it. I see you, Goddess. All right, let's tap into it, y'all. Now, this interview right here is 3 months ago. All right. And this is from the Fox News podcast, Colorado cold case, the red rum of JonBenet Ramsey. And it was 3 months ago. All right. All right. Let's tap into it.
December 1996. If there is a public case that has fascinated the public for decades, it's this one, the JonBenet Ramsey murder. It's been decades now. The case remains open, and it remains a subject of great fascination to not only those of us who cover true crime, but those of us who follow true crime, the audience who can remember the case, but now a whole new generation of people, thanks to Netflix specials and some of the developments, have hooked into this case in hopes that it may someday be solved. Now, we have an expert on the case and an expert legal mind. We have Joshua Ritter here to walk us through not only the history, but where it might be going, because believe it or not, after all of this time, there may be some developments possible. So, Josh, you and I know each other. First of all, very good to see you again, buddy.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
So help us set the scene. Like I said, it's a long time ago. We're talking the day after Christmas, 1996, and this horrific discovery in Denver, in Colorado. The family wakes up to discover JonBenet not where they left her. She's 6 years old. How does it go?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a nightmare. I mean, it's every parent's nightmare. They wake up December 26th, their 6-year-old's not in her bed. It looks like she had slept in her bed, but she's not there. Mother starts looking around the home and discovers downstairs there is a note, and opens the note, and it's a 2.5-page long ransom note. And
Right.
you can't, I mean, I can only imagine what is going through their minds at that point. Sickness in their stomach.
All right, now let's start here, and this is before they even get their commentary on it. I believe definitely that the ransom note, I believe that 3-page ransom note was written either by Patsy or somebody that Patsy knew. Drop a three if y'all believe that Patsy or somebody that she knew wrote that that ransom note. Drop a 4 if you feel like Patsy didn't have nothing to do with that ransom note.
The panic about what possibly has taken place. She immediately wakes up her husband, John. This is Patsy who discovers the note, wakes up her husband, John. They call the police almost immediately, despite the instructions in the ransom note. And it is initially, and we're going to get into how this kind of changed over time, but it's initially very much treated like a kidnapping, like a missing persons. They are calling authorities, they're calling neighbors, they're just trying to figure out where their daughter is.
And, you know, that's one of the rubs in this case as the initial investigation unfolds, because, as you say, it's perceived as a missing. So what they're thinking is that, okay, and then when I say that, I mean the cops, all right? The police show up, as you say, they're called, they show up. They're thinking that of course, the house is going to be important, but they're thinking, okay, she's potentially alive. There's a ransom note. And so the action is going to be offset. It's not going to be in the house. And yet it goes that way, and it ends up being a real impediment to the investigation. So take us from there. What happens next?
No, you're absolutely right. They did not treat the home, to your description, like a crime scene.
Right.
They didn't remove everyone from the house. There were neighbors that showed up. There were family members that showed up. People were helping to clean up the house because they're just trying to help the family in their time of need and concern. So potential evidence is being moved around. Things are being cleaned up. No one is treating this house as if it's a crime scene, because they're thinking, like you said, the crime scene is probably elsewhere, and they don't need to be all that concerned with the home. And that's on law enforcement, really, because they believed it wasn't a potential murder scene. Obviously, at this point, it's still a missing person, but they didn't even believe the home was a crime scene. And they're not treating it that way. They're not removing witnesses. They're not preserving evidence. But then as time goes on, in fact, hours later, they instruct John, the father, let's take another look around the house. Let's see if there's anything potentially outstanding to you that might be helpful in trying to locate her. He goes down to the basement. This house, and I think that's also important too, is laid out almost like a maze. It's not a very straightforward floor plan. So you have to go down to the basement. The basement has several different rooms. He goes into through a room they call the train room, where he had like a model train set up. And there's a room that has been locked, opens that door, and makes this nightmarish discovery.
All right, let's stop right there. So this is hours after them finding the ransom note. The ransom note was found first, right? Now, this is just my opinion. I could be wrong. Y'all can build with me, or even y'all could destroy it and say, nah, Shane, I don't feel that way. But we find the ransom note, right? Wouldn't it make sense after we find the ransom note? Wouldn't it make sense for the dad to tell mom, call 911 while I search the house? Is there any dads out there? Are there any fathers out there? And moms, do y'all feel the same way? wouldn't it make sense once the ransom note was found, immediately, dad tells mom, or even mom says, I'll call the police, you search the house. This is what doesn't fit the puzzle for me, right? They waited. But let me make sure we on the same path. Okay, L agrees with me. Okay, CJ, that would make perfect sense. Okay, anybody else? That's how I'm looking at it. You know, but I do know we all different. You know, we do things different, and you know, it's always woulda, coulda, shoulda, but I'm searching the house. Who knows how we would act as parents? They woke up to a nightmare. I can accept that. That's why I want to get the opinions of others. So I can accept that. They waited and ain't no intruder knowing the layout of the house. I mean, this individual or individuals had to have some balls. Now, I'm thinking in this situation on a caper, I'm in and out. I'm not playing around with it. But I do know some that will hang around and, you know, waste time. But I'm just saying, me, I'm an in and out person. Not only balls, but patience. It's almost like the individual wanted to get caught. Like, you in this house, you happen to at least be in the house when they are there. Because according to John and Patsy, they don't believe that the intruder was there before they left to the party, but they do believe that the intruder was in there. Well, we know that they believe that the intruder was in there to either bring JonBenet's body back, or if he or she or them were already in there and waited till they went to sleep and then made their exit. CJ says, unless there was an unknown squatter. Now, all of these things are possible. You always got to keep that window open for the possibility. But it's just, for me, I'm not buying it. That boy deleted his sister because of jealousy. I just can't buy it. I can't, y'all.
Of finding JonBenet, she is underneath a blanket. She is dead, and she has a rope, a garrote around her neck. And again, the problems with preserving the crime scene, he immediately grabs her. She's got tape on her mouth. He rips that tape off. He grabs her, runs her upstairs in kind of the, you know, vain hope of seeing if she can't be resuscitated. Right. She's obviously been dead for hours, but again, all of that potential evidence has been disturbed.
And all of it, it's understandable. You know, here's a father who discovers his child, and he scoops the kid up. He scoops up JonBenet and runs her upstairs. You know, one of the things we should recognize is the family has money, and the house is big, right? He's a big executive. I remember the pictures of the house. It's kind of like a mansion. And so it's cavernous. There are all these nooks and crannies. The father is a computer graphics executive who's very well off. Patsy is a former beauty queen. That's the mother. And, you know, the thing that I remember coming out relative to this case that really, I think, hit the public consciousness is as the case developed and it became clear, okay, it's not a kidnapping, it's a homicide, and it's not one of those ones that seems to be amenable to a quick solve. You know, we've all heard the 48-hour rule and all of that, but very often that is the case. But it's a child. But then there were the images of JonBenet having participated in these child pageants. And if you were sitting where I think the general public was sitting, including myself, they were kind of jarring. because she's 6 years old. So do you recall any of that? I mean, I'm older than you are, but like, are you up on the fact that those images came out and the country was kind of like, what the hell?
Yeah, no, immediately. And this is kind of the beginnings too of the media's role in all of this, because it, like you said, it was a case that really captured the attention of the nation, and the media ran with it. I mean, the daily articles, news coverage, news specials, daytime television was all over this. And a lot of that did seem to kind of focus around the idea that she was this child beauty queen and took part in these childhood pageants. And I don't think you could find a picture of JonBenet where she wasn't all made up with her hair and makeup and in a pageant. There was never one photograph I think the media showed where she looked like a normal 6-year-old girl.
Right.
And this image kind of became the driving force behind all of this, that somehow that was a nefarious thing that she was participating in, and that may have played a role in her either kidnapping and murder, or perhaps, you know, even more sinister, her parents' involvement in it, which has become, you know, to this day, like you said, it is still a case that is speculated on by people online and in the true crime community.
Now, I will take this. It's two things that I will accept. One, when they mentioned that the house is like a mansion, so maybe they did search some rooms, and maybe the basement didn't come into play until hours later, maybe. And I can accept that. And then also, as what Criminal Network is saying, and if Burke did it, did you hear his interview right after the red rum? A 9-year-old can't lie that good. I can accept that. At 9 years old, I mean, you got to be, and he's a kid. So he didn't slip up. So I can accept that. 7,000 square feet. I can accept those two. I can.
I remember, you know, this is in the era of, obviously, before our streaming services and everything else. Magazines were very big. She was on the cover of every magazine, and I still have this image in my head of People magazine. Her name's plastered there, and she was on a series of, apparently, I believe, People magazine covers. And they were all pageant pictures.
Right.
And what it felt like is, from the perspective of the general public, is that there was this niche subculture that you didn't realize existed of child beauty queens. And I think there was a reflexive thing in the media where there was an impulse to, I don't want to say blame initially the homicide on the parents or on Patsy, but there was discomfort with how she was portrayed. And it became very easy to go from, I don't like this 6-year-old kind of being sexualized, let's be frank. And then the fact that Patsy had been a beauty queen. And so that connection was made very quickly. And as you say, the parents became a subject of investigation and a tremendous amount of speculation. So let's segue into the investigation, because now we're past the initial stage. The cops have shown up. And look, I want to put it on record. I'm sympathetic here. It's undeniable that they could have done things better and differently, the police that responded. Okay, you always want to make a crime scene larger. That's the general rule, as opposed to smaller, and then you can always shrink it later. But, you know, having responded to things like suicides and stuff like that, and, you know, you have the parents there or family members there, it's very difficult to say something like, okay, your daughter is dead. All of you have to get out of the house.
Right.
Or your daughter is missing. We're going to treat this. Yeah, you have a ransom note, but, you know, it could be a homicide. Everybody out. And we're sealing the house. That's a big step. And so, you know, I do think that we do have to bear in mind now, look, having people coming in and out of the house, people cleaning up, people bringing over food. They had a victim's advocate come over and things like that. Not great. And all of that is pertinent to where the investigation goes. So now it's clear we got the homicide. And there are a number of nodes here that we can talk about relative to what the homicide investigators are presented with. So take us through that. The homicide guys show up. Now they have a body that's DOA. They have the parents there. They have a contaminated crime scene. There are some things that were in play where they found her, the note, how she died. They have some stuff to go on. So can you walk us through that?
Yeah, well, first they have the body, and like I said, she has been, according to the medical examiner, her death was through asphyxiation, but also through a fracture to her skull. So it looks like she was hit over the head, fractured her skull, severe damage there, but the actual death was facilitated through this, what I described as a garrote. And that becomes important because the part of the way that this garrote was made was through a broken paintbrush taken from the home. Right. So this is kind of the evidence that they have to go on initially with the body itself. Later on, they then learned that there was possible evidence of maybe even sexual assault as part of the murder.
Right.
But I think the first piece of evidence that's really what they focus on is this ransom note, because it is so remarkable and so different from their experience with ransom notes. The first being, it is very long. It's 2.5 pages long, right. Handwritten. I mean, you just got to think about the amount of time it takes someone to write that note. Right. The other evidence they soon find out is that it was written inside the home because it's taken from a piece of paper on a pad inside of the home, because they see a almost like a first draft attempt at writing this note later on in the pages of that same pad of paper.
Let's stop right there. The ransom note was written definitely inside of that home. I'm not buying it, y'all. I'm not buying it. That's a dope fiend move. That's a crackhead move. Trying to convince you to buy something that's just not there. You know, crackhead to come with the picture of the TV. Not the TV now. Here come crackhead James with a picture. Shank, look, boy, and you know Nikki Lynn and everybody else know crackhead James. Man, boy, look at the size of it, Shank. And the whole time you like, yeah, boy, let's look, man. That would look good on your wall, Shank. Yeah. I mean, the crackhead's selling it. But the whole time, it's just a picture. So it's the same way with this. It's like this ransom note, 2.5, 3-page ransom note was written inside of the home. Negative. If it's nothing else, if it's nothing else in this case that I have to call out and say it's some BS, it's the ransom note. It's the ransom note. Nobody is going to do that.
So now they have a person who killed her, wrote this ransom note either before or after, but took some time to write the note. And then the other thing about the note is it's just bizarre in its language. It's very detailed. It adds a bunch of kind of superfluous language, but it requests $118,000. Such a specific number, not a round number. And that is where kind of their investigation begins, is with this note. Is it, their questions are, is this a for real attempt at ransom? Was this to try to throw investigators off? Or immediately their suspicions, and again, I agree with you, I'm not trying to blame the investigators here, but their suspicions immediately turn towards the family, as is statistically kind of where these investigations go. And they start to wonder if the note was written by either the mother or father, again, in an attempt to throw off investigators.
Let me ask, before I move on, do those that feel like the family played no part in it, after hearing that and after knowing about the ransom note, do y'all still feel as though at least Patsy didn't have anything to do with it? Shelly says facts. Criminal Network says, would you do that to avoid going to prison for life? Who was the guy that claimed he deleted JonBenet Ramsey? I mean, I can take Burke off the table. Shank, he's 9 years old, man. There's no way in the world he would have been able to go along with the lie. I could take him off the table. I can't take Patsy off the table, y'all. And I can't take that ransom note. Those are the two that I just can't take off the table. The ransom note and Patsy. Nikki Lynn says, It comes down to science.
Now, what is the significance for our listeners who don't know of the $118,000?
Well, it sounds like depending on which reports you believe, it sounds like either investigators soon find out or John Ramsey himself tells them that number is very similar, 118,000 plus change. And so for the ransom note to be asking for that very specific amount, it seemed to the Ramsey family and what they told investigators that this person must have known about his finances.
Right.
I mean,
anybody want to answer that? Who could it have been? Anybody? I could respect that. Who could it have been if it wasn't Patsy behind the ransom note? Who could it been? Who could it been? Right, Leslie Bean. Forgot his name. We could make a list of the evidence that points towards the family and the evidence that points to others. And I'm with you on that, Nikki Lynn. Let's stay with that ransom note. Let's just stick with the ransom note for right now. Now, let's stick with the $118,000 that is in that ransom note. Who would have known about the bonus other than John and Patsy? Anybody? Criminal Network? Nikki Lynn? Anybody want to answer that? Okay, so a stranger got notepad and pen to write a note for money with the little girl body. I'm with you. Patsy and John had no prior abuse, physical or sexual, in the past, ever. She was a God-fearing woman. Criminal Network. We know a lot of God-fearing women that'll tear the fur off your ass. We know a lot of God-fearing women that'll put you 6 feet deep. Right? Nikki Lynn, science, how? L says, no idea. I see you, Tam. Okay. CJ says, someone that worked with John. And that's a good answer. Because I'm sure that maybe someone that worked with him knew. Now, am I buying it? I can bring it on. I can put it on the table, but I'm not buying it. But I can put it on the table now. Anyone in their circle may have known about his bonus. True. It may have been public knowledge as well if he was high profile. True. That's true. A sicko who knew he was going to inappropriately touch and red rum a girl might come up with rouse to throw police off his trail. How? Make it personal. I'll accept that. Make sure y'all hit the like button coming in. The evidence. If he worked with computers and he had partners, maybe his partner. I can accept that, Tune. Yeah, too close. So you on the same page with me, Daz, Renee. All right.
And the other thing about the note, too, is the note refers to the Ramseys, calls John by his name, refers to JonBenet. This person, whoever wrote the note, knows the family. In other words, it's not written by some knowledge of who they were.
Right. So what is, before we explore a little bit the 118, what is some of the superfluous language? And because it's a rambling note, as you say, it's very long for a ransom note. Usually you want to limit that stuff if you're the perp because you don't want to give detectives to work on, anything to work on. So, what is it that's in that was sort of extraneous?
Yeah, not only do you want to not give detectives stuff to work on, but you're also thinking about the amount of time. That was always my question.
Absolutely.
How long did it take to write this thing? And you're sitting around with perhaps a dead body downstairs in a home that you don't belong in the middle of the night, and you're writing out this note.
Yeah.
But it talks about things like, we have problems with the government and we are an organization. And then it talks about how he better not speak to anyone or his daughter's going to end up dead. If we see you speaking to a dog, she's going to end up dead. again, adding all of these kind of details and strong language and colorful language that just didn't seem necessary to the purpose of the note, if it was in fact a ransom note. The note could have simply said, provide us with $118,000, further details to follow. But instead it goes on and on to kind of give all the purpose of it.
You got to take these leaps in order to move an investigation forward sometimes. I would argue that almost certainly the letter was written after she is deceased, because you're not going to sit in a house of a bunch of sleeping people. You're not supposed to be in there. You got to be awfully comfortable in a house like that. If she is alive still, she's in the bed, you didn't do anything yet, you didn't grab her, that you're going to sit there, you're going to compose this note, you're going to then recompose it because you don't like the first draft, you're going to make all of these threats. So it feels to me like it likely is being done after the fact. And this person, it very much crime of opportunity, right? The paintbrush, which is from the house, is used to fashion the garrote. So, the theories that are involved here very much seem to point to somebody who, as you say, knows the family, knows the house, is comfortable in and out of the house, right? And is willing to sit there with a dead body nearby, because at this point now you're on the hook for a murder, and to compose this note. So what do they start to do? Now you have all of these factors, and you have the $118,000, which tracks to his bonus. And, it's the end of the year. It's Christmas, December 26th. So he gets an annual bonus. It must have come in already. So obviously you're talking about somebody close to the family. As you say, this is not something random, some, drifter that wandered into the house. Where do they start to look? Where do they go?
Yeah, almost immediately, it seems like the investigation starts to look at John and Patsy Ramsey.
Right.
They seem to be the primary focus. And again, it's understandable. We know that statistically, in most of these cases involving a young child, it's going to be a member of the family. She does actually have an older brother who is interviewed initially by police.
He's about 9 years old, I believe, right?
Yeah.
JonBenet does.
He's 9 years old at the time. There are some theories even still today of his possible involvement. Now, I will say the DA's office has since then absolutely cleared him. Mm-hmm. But the police interview him. They interview the parents, and the parents are initially very cooperative. And I say initially because that doesn't last for very long. Right. Because as this investigation goes on, as the media picks it up, the media turns it into a firestorm almost immediately. Again, they're running with this kind of exploitive nature of the beauty pageants. They focus on the parents and everything that are to do under a microscope. I mean, the way that are they grieving properly? Are they not grieving properly? Statements that they make. And now, again, maybe perhaps understandable. I never like to say how a person should and should not behave under these circumstances, because who knows how anybody would behave. But they decide to hire an attorney, and they feel early on that they need help with all of this. And the attorney, as most attorneys do, kind of shuts down all communication. Right. That creates a backlash, and that is immediately seen as being suspicious. And then it's kind of turns into, well, they're not cooperating with authorities. Authorities start to, and we've discovered this since that time, start to kind of leak information in the hope of maybe smoking out the parents. Yeah. But from very early on, it appears as though, even though other suspects were considered, their primary investigation, the full force of it is pointed towards the Ramseys.
It really was. I remember this. And I also remember when they lawyered up, and it became clear that they were going to be a lot less amenable to the investigation, because they got the sense that, hey, they're looking at us here. And I'm taking the position very clearly now. I don't want to take the position of clearing anybody, but we have to play devil's advocate. If you're sitting where they are and they had nothing to do with it, they're dealing with the death of their child, all of a sudden they realize, wait a minute, they think we did this. It's understandable that they would lawyer up, and then the lawyer's just doing his job. But it became very, very easy to put them in the perp box, for lack of a better term, because not only of what you're saying, they didn't seem to be fully cooperating, but then, as I said, there was this discomfort with the fact that all of these photos were coming out of JonBenet, and they just seemed to be really, really unsavory. And the feeling was that this is how they were living. He was making all kinds of money. She's a former beauty queen. She's reliving her glory days through her 6-year-old daughter. And I can remember videos being shown, and it really felt like this uncomfortable subculture was being revealed to the public. And I was very much part of it. There was a little bit of a feeling of, you know what, even if they're not guilty, they're guilty, because they put the kid out there and advertised her, and some sicko twigged to it. Now, you talked about the fact that there were some other suspects that were looked at, and it becomes a point in this case that maybe they focused on the parents too much initially. But any intel on who else they looked at, and any other sort of avenues they were going down relative to the investigation?
Yeah, well, they, once they started to kind of broaden their idea of who could have done this, and they started to look outside the home, they started to think about intruders, and they started to your point, think about who might have been drawn to JonBenet, and perhaps this connection being the fact that she had taken part in these beauty pageants. So one of the people that they looked at was the photographer who had taken a lot of these photographs during the beauty pageants, whether or not that person had any, interest that might be suspicious to police. Right. There were also other assaults and break-ins in that neighborhood. Right. That they started to look at other suspects who may have, done this before, a failed attempt. This attempt maybe went too far and ended up in a murder. There were no,
she woke up or something. Right.
There were no other murders, but there were other break-ins and there were other attempted assaults. And so they started to look into that too. And then as the years have gone on, there have been other suspects who've, come in and out of the suspicion of police. And later on, a person who became a prime suspect was a man by the name of John Mark Carr. And he had been contacting one of the reporters, documentarians who had been following this case and communicating for him for some time, and said that he was the one responsible. Police were able to, through some very clever work, locate him in Thailand. Mm-hmm. He was arrested. He actually gave a confession. Now, that confession, as you and I know, has to stand up against what do they know independent of media. That's on right. This case. That's he apparently right. Didn't know anything that was independent of media, but they also tested him for DNA, because this case has been, and we can get into it later, but it has been the investigation as the years pass has been guided by the DNA. There was DNA of an unidentified male found on her undergarments, right, that they have never been able to match to anyone. Now, right. First of all, they've never matched it to any family member of right. the Ramseys, right. But every suspect that has come up has also not matched to this DNA and has therefore, quote unquote, been cleared by the DNA. Right. So to this day, any suspect that even seems like is remotely good for this doesn't match the DNA in this case.
And
now, I will say that because the DNA doesn't match John or Burke, I will have to say that up until now, they're innocent. Now, the John Carr guy, Criminal Network says was a fraud. Now, we could just imagine how many people, I'm going to call them trolls. We can imagine how many people were trolling, trying to come up off of that case, trying to get a name off of that case. Some people might say, I don't know, Shank Rob, but why would my man, John Carr, why would he throw himself out there, saying that he done it? Well, if he didn't do it, he knows that shit, they're going to catch me in my lie. But until they catch me in my lie, I'm going to enjoy my 5 minutes of fame. That's how trolling works. Now, I did do the demonstration on the guy, Nick Wolf. And I'm going to go to Nick Wolf. When I was 9, I had Hot Wheels and a booger collection, not a sexual fetish to read around my sister. John Mark Carr was a fraud. The main problem in this case, the Boulder PD does not want to part with the DNA, and that's true. Criminal activity in kids is more evident than what people claim to notice about Burke's weird behavior. He didn't do it. Nikki Lynn stands on that. I believe Criminal Network and some of the others stand on Burke did not do it. Now, because the DNA doesn't match Burke's, for right now, I gotta say Burke didn't do it. However, Burke stays on the table. Now, what do y'all know about this Nick Wolf guy? Now, if Burke didn't do it, my honest opinion, Nick Wolf, Nicholas done it. Let's tap into Nicholas for those that aren't familiar with Nick Wolf. Now, Nick Wolf was a prime suspect in the case. However, they kept it hush-hush. They swept it up under the rug. So let's see what we have on Nick Wolf. And y'all tell me what y'all think.
Welcome to the story of St. Nick and the JonBenet case update.
Mr. Ramsey, be sure to listen very carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession.
Have you ever heard of the name Nick Wolf before? And his name having anything to do with the JonBenet Ramsey case? Not Chris Wolf, but Nick Wolf. It's highly doubtful. His full name is Nicholas Leo Wolf, born in Minnesota on December 5, 1943. If alive, he would currently be 79 years old. Welcome, and prepare yourself for the story of Saint Nick and the JonBenet Ramsey murder investigation.
A lone wolf makes his own footprints. Don't you all find it strange that 26 years have gone by since her death, yet you have never even heard of Nick Wolf before? It is now an established fact that he was a suspect early on in the Ramsey case, and Nick Wolf was high up on the possible suspect lists left behind by Detective Lou Smith, R.I.P., and private investigator, Ollie Gray, R.I.P. If you know anything about the Ramsey case, that should tell you enough. In addition, Nick Wolf's DNA has never been collected to verify or eliminate him as a suspect.
Let's stop right there. Why hasn't everybody else's DNA has been collected, correct? Why hasn't Nick Wolf's DNA been collected? Anybody would like to answer that?
Non-performance of duty and widespread corruption throughout the Boulder Police Department. It is a known fact that the entire Boulder Police Department and the Boulder County District Attorney's Office have been plagued and riddled with corruption and blatant police misconduct throughout the city and county for decades, including many officers being reprimanded for perjury, abuse of power, neglect of duty, racial profiling and police misconduct, which are all illegal behavior by officers
in their official capacity.
The cover-up, what BPD tried to sweep under the rug and hoped would go away forever, has come back to haunt them. Technology was moving a lot faster than the cover-up had planned on. It is painfully and sadly obvious that the Boulder Police Department does not want this case solved. The Idaho stabbing murder suspect was identified in 17 days using genetic genealogy. The Boulder Police Department has run out of excuses, and we are forcing them to play their cards. Solve it, or hand it over.
Disgraced Boulder police officer and commander Thomas Trujillo was in charge of the Ramsey case and was recently reprimanded for misconduct, mainly for not doing any work on the Ramsey case as well as others, since 2019. His punishment, 3 days, no pay. Is this a joke to you all? Legally, that is non-performance of duty, under the Code of Conduct for Law Enforcement Officials in Colorado. You are all cowards, by every definition of the word. And that goes for everybody at the Boulder Police Department, and the Boulder County District Attorney's Office, and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, as well as Governor Jared Polis, Mayor Aaron Brockett, DA Michael Dougherty, and Chief of Police, Maris Herold.
Everyone has failed the Ramsey family. And if the Boulder Police Department honestly thinks everyone is gonna sit around and wait another 26 years for them to solve this case, then they must really think we're all dumb. Reminder: this was an unforgivable, intentional, brutal torture and killing of an innocent, young girl, and it remains unsolved to this day. You might have forgotten, but we haven't. JonBenet Ramsey and her family deserve better than this.
Nick Wolfe, and why his DNA must be collected. Number 1, Nick Wolfe was a possible suspect very early on in the case. Number 2, Nick was acting strange after the murder, according to a report from the nun at his church on the Abbey. Number 3, the nun stated that they gave Nick a pair of high-tech boots from the donation box. Number 4, Nick has never been tested or cleared using his DNA.
Number 5, according to family members, Nick was a known pedophile. Number 6, on a tape recording by police, the nun stated that when asked about JonBenet, she quoted Nick as saying, "That girl got what she deserved." Number 7, on December 26, 1996, the day after the murder, Nick took his Minnesota license plates off of his green Jeep and spray painted the Jeep primer in the Colorado winter. Number 8, Nick then put the Jeep inside of an enclosed car trailer and never drove it again and sold it a couple months later.
Number 9, Nick skipped town soon after the murder. Number 10, Nick is ex-military and served in the Air Force. Number 11, the beaver hairs recovered at the crime scene and on JonBenet's body can be sourced back to Nick. Number 12, Nick was born and raised into the St. Boniface Catholic Church and farming on the Abbey together as one.
Number 13, Nick graduated high school in 1961 from the St. Boniface High School. Number 14, Nick was in the typing club at the St. Boniface High School run by his teacher, Sister Cathell, SBTC. Number 15, in the 1940s, the United States Air Force adopted the motto "Victory by Valor." Number 16, Detective Lou Smith and private investigator Ollie Gray both had Nick high up on their possible suspect lists they left behind.
Number 17, Nick has been completely off the grid and missing in action since 1997. Number 18, there has never been a missing persons report filed for Nick. Number 19, there is no death certificate on file for Nick. Number 20, Nick is openly gay and bisexual.
Number 21, it has been said that Nick lives in a small, Unabomber type of cabin in Minnesota, very close to the Canadian border. And number 22, Nick Wolfe's very own daughter has expressed to authorities that she is positive that her father was responsible for the murder of JonBenet Ramsey.
What are y'all thoughts about Nick? Yeah, Nick's DNA needs to be tested. Now, if Burt didn't do it, I'm putting my money on Nick because he disappeared while the Boulder PD was blaming the parents. His name disappeared. That boy is living his best life. Facts. They definitely could test for a genetic DNA match. Wonder why they haven't. She was a cute little girl. Jenny Fisher, Nick's daughter, has left her DNA, and supposedly in 2016, it cleared Nick, but I won't believe it till they test Nick's DNA. This Wolf guy seems to meet the criteria for a good suspect. She looks like Erica Kirk. Yeah, Nick's DNA needs to be tested. Wow. Victory. Wow. Erica Kirk did win Miss America. If she said he did, then has to be true. Now, that's his daughter now. I found him, and he is alive and well, and Minnesota property taxes are public records. He is 82 years of age. Now, the daughter, so my opinion on it, if it's not Burke, it's Nick. Everybody else DNA was taken. Why wasn't Nick's taken? That pic is Jenny Fisher. His daughter lives in Colorado. So Now, back to whether or not Patsy unalived her because she wet the bed. I don't think so. I don't think so. I just don't think so.
The cast of characters. The fact that just about everyone involved in the case, family members, friends, acquaintances, ex-employees, and neighbors have all been cleared through DNA, must mean that it was someone the Ramseys did not know. Stranger crime. Not sure where JonBenet caught Nick's eye, whether it be church, or a pageant, or parked on the Ramsey street, but she became Nick's fantasy, as well as his obsession.
Pack of wolves. Random fact. In the Ramsey case, there are many people with the last name Wolf, somehow connected to the case. However, none of them know each other, and none of them are related. There is a Christian Wolf, Nicholas Wolf, Michael Wolf, and a Denise Wolf. Cleared suspect. Christian Wolf actually sued the Ramseys for defamation of character for naming him in their book, The Death of Innocence. Court case. Wolf versus Ramsey.
Deciphering the ransom note. One thing nobody has ever done in the history of the Ramsey case is decipher the ransom note. So, not only must the DNA match the UM1, foreign DNA collected at the crime scene, but the suspect and the ransom note must be connected as well. Not just some of the note, but the entire thing. Not speculation on how and why, and no handwriting experts, but the actual substance of the ransom note and why it was written. Not only did Nick know she was dead when he left her in the wine cellar in the basement, but he still neatly placed the ransom note on the spiral staircase as he left. He knew he was going to leave her there from the very start, because he most likely didn't have a place to take her, and why would he take her, when he already got what he wanted? And exactly what he came for.
SBTC. Nick Wolf was born into the St. Boniface Catholic Church, SBCC, and went to high school at St. Boniface High School, SBHS, and was also in the St. Boniface Typing Club, SBTC. His entire life, including all of his family members, were raised around the St. Boniface Catholic Church and the SB letters, all linked back to Minnesota. The staging of the Ramsey home was all done on purpose. Nick did not plan on taking her out of the house, and he never intended to call and get the ransom money. It was a complete diversion of his sick perversion. He obviously had plenty of time alone in the house that evening waiting for the Ramseys to get home. The lengthy ransom note didn't seem rushed at all when it was written, quite the opposite.
The ransom note. When dealing with ransom notes in a kidnap for ransom, it's been said that the author will portray themselves the opposite of who they really are. Nick's entire life has been encompassed around the church, yet there is not one thing religious or spiritual written in the note. He is disassociating himself from who is doing this, and he is cleverly placing the blame elsewhere, perhaps even towards John and the family. Not one cuss word was used in the entire note. He cannot disassociate himself from every aspect of himself, so using cuss words isn't in his comfort zone. Despite the substance of the note, it was actually written in a polite, feminine quality type of tone. Although the ransom note is filled with many heinous things, it was not written in a mean tone. For the most part, besides the military overtones throughout, the rest of the note can be attributed to many different ransom and vigilante-type action movies from the 1970s, 80s, and 90s.
It was never a kidnap for ransom, because if it was a real kidnap for ransom, and he was already able to grab her out of her bed and get her downstairs without waking anyone up, then why even continue to the basement?
And that's facts. And I mean, like I said, we definitely, now, if you still not looking at this ransom note as being a diversion, then I really don't know what to tell you. But I'm past the ransom note. That has already been established. The ransom note is bullshit. Now, we can chop it up, who wrote it, all day long. But that ransom note is BS, complete BS. All right. I appreciate everybody for pulling up. Once again, Monday through Fridays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time is when I do my demonstrations. I also do political demonstrations Monday through Fridays, 5 p.m. A lot of y'all do not get my notifications. So for the year 2026, Monday through Fridays, 10 p.m. Eastern Time is when I will be live. Also, Monday through Fridays, 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. Eastern Time, I will be live doing my political demonstrations. I'm not sure about 12 noon or 12:30 noon. I'll let you all know when I start going live at 12 and 12:30 noon. But definitely Monday through Fridays, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Salute everybody. I appreciate everybody for pulling up. Happy New Year's to everybody that I didn't say Happy New Year's to. I will leave the chat running and you all can hang around. Salute everybody.
He could have gone out of any door he wanted. The motive was completely sexual in nature. Nick acting out on his sick fantasy and knowing he was going to kill her. And he was gonna do everything in his power to not get caught. However, if JonBenet was dead before the killer left, and after using gloves, and leaving no fingerprints, and wiping the body down, why would he leave so much evidence behind, such as a lengthy ransom note? It's by far the biggest clue in the case. Nick didn't have to leave the note, and if he already did, he could have grabbed the note as he was leaving, but he didn't. Instead, he placed it neatly on the spiral staircase. That diversion obviously had to be done, in order to buy some time and for the ruse to work. All of the calamity surrounding the ransom note and the entire case was to cover up why it even happened. Self-gratification, nothing more, nothing less. And so far, the ruse has worked for over 26 years. Although the ransom note was extremely clever, it was not articulate. There were a couple of misspellings, speaking in first and third person, as well as a couple of run-off sentences. He knew who the Ramseys were, but did not personally know the Ramseys. Most of the personal information found on the note, connected to John, could have easily been found snooping around the house and going through John's records. And he might have known her name was JonBenet, but probably didn't know how to spell it.
Some say the ransom note was vengeful or somebody holding a grudge, or perhaps even an ex-employee, but that was all part of the plan. How many ways can you point your finger in a different direction was by design and the overall theme of the note. The most brilliant thing he ever did with the ransom note was make it personal, even though him and the Ramseys didn't even know each other. And personal enough to blame John for what happened by not following the rules, and that the killer was only doing his job. The killer already knew John wouldn't be able to follow all the countless, detailed instructions on the note. In reality, nothing was John's fault at all. Him and his family woke up to a nightmare that forever changed their lives and countless people around the world.
Whenever Nick decided on a signature for the ransom note, it was simple. SB something. Being that St. Boniface was his upbringing in Minnesota, so nobody would make the connection all the way in Colorado. Perhaps he underestimated how big the case would become. Big enough that someone finally connected the dots 26 years later.
There must have been a triggering event. It's textbook. JonBenet's killer likely had a similar event prior to the murder. Maybe a divorce, or a termination, or a breakup, or even family trouble. Something made him finally act out on his fantasy.
While writing this fantasy out on paper, and in his mind, he seemed to have fun with it. He wrote it before the murder, and the one and only thing on his mind was sexually deviant in nature. It's the only reason he broke into the Ramsey home. It's the only reason he patiently waited for the parents to fall asleep. It's the only reason he abducted her out of her bed. It's the only reason there was a girl found murdered in her own house. And it's the only reason he left the ransom note. A diversion for his sick, demented perversion.